Welcome to Elite Expert Insider Podcast, where we will inspire, motivate, and educate entrepreneurs, innovators, and growth seekers. Brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, making the best and brightest in the industry #1 best-selling authors. 80% of people say they want to write a book. We're assuming that's the same for you. If so, contact us at www.eliteonlinepublishing.com and make your book a reality. Hey, it's Melanie Johnson here along with Jen Foster. How you doing, Jen?
Doing great.
Thanks for joining us again to everybody. So listen, make sure you subscribe to the podcast because we love when you subscribe and share the podcast to everyone because we know you always learn something and get motivated and inspired. And today we are going to talk about 3 awesome game-changing fitness things that you can do. Phil White is written 4 books. So he's an Emmy-nominated writer. He's joining us today. So I'm always trying to get in shape. I'm always looking for something new that's going to change my fitness game, my health game. So stay tuned for that. But also remember, Jen and I own Elite Online Publishing, and we make all of our authors #1 bestsellers. So we would love for you to become part of our family and be one of our authors. So look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com, and you can fill out a contact form there, and we'll see if you qualify to be one of our amazing authors. So Phil, thanks for joining us today, Emmy-nominated writer. Thanks for coming.
Sounds fancy. Maybe I made it up. I didn't make it up, but it would be funny if I did. Yeah. It's just resume padding.
Yeah, love it. Well, Phil, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at, what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I started off by writing history books. So I wrote a book about how on earth Winston Churchill ended up in the middle of Missouri in 1946 and the Iron Curtain speech he gave there, which was really the first time a Western leader had really called out communism for what it was. And so really I told that from the perspective of the small town college president down there in Fulton, Missouri, and how on earth he managed to get the most famous guy in the world to come to his small town and give this speech when obviously Churchill was fielding thousands of requests like this. And then from there, that kind of led me to Harry Truman's role in that, where someone who was on the board of trustees at the college had gone to school with Harry Truman, and they're both Missouri guys. And so he managed to get this college president 5 minutes in the White House. And he said, let me see this invite letter to Churchill. And so he slides it across, and Truman reads it real quick. And he adds a little postscript at the bottom. And he says, "Dear Winston, this is a wonderful small school in my home state. You should come. I'll introduce you. Sincerely yours, Harry Truman." And then he slides that back across and says, "There, now send that to him." And so really, I then went down another rabbit hole for a couple of years with Truman, and really became fascinated by how on earth he managed to win the 1948 election, where it seemed like no one in the Democratic Party wanted him to take over from FDR when he passed away unexpectedly. But he did, and he did a really good job, obviously, and we ended up winning the war, the Allies. But he had a double split in his party, and the Republican ticket was so strong that the Roper poll stopped polling on September 21st, which, if we figure that's 6-7 weeks till the election. And Roper wrote a column in New York Times that said, this isn't just over, but this is going to be the biggest whitewash in election history. Somehow it wasn't. So Truman got in a train and went on the rails and gave 355 speeches, put down 32,000 miles. It was the longest train campaigning trip of its kind, and the last one, because by the time Eisenhower logged more miles, it was by plane. And so really just got out to meet the people and told his story, and this is how he was able to turn it around. So somehow now we find ourselves to health and fitness. So I was writing for some outdoorsy magazines, Sup the Mag, which is kind of the stand-up paddleboarding companion to Surfer Magazine, and then Canoe and Kayak. And I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Dr. Kelly Starrett, who is a DPT, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and for a long time was the movement and mobility guy for CrossFit for about 10 or 12 years. And so I had messed up my back in the gym, deadlifting, and didn't want to go the pill route or the surgery route to try to fix that. And so I found Kelly's videos online, his mobilitywod.com website, which is still up and running, and just through doing some of these soft tissue exercises was able to not be bent sideways, which I literally was for like 2 weeks. It had locked down so hard. and never thought I would be pain free again, and had nerve pain and all kinds of terrible things. And just with Kelly Starrett's work, it all went away in just a few minutes a day. And so we ended up writing a book called Waterman 2.0, which is kind of a movement manifesto for surfers, paddlers, and rowers. So that's available on Amazon. And then also he introduced me to some of his friends, like Fergus Connolly, who at the time was at the 49ers. So we wrote a book called Game Changer together. And then Brian McKenzie and Andy Galpin, two more friends of Kelly's, we wrote a book called Unplugged about the limits of fitness technology. And then one that came out of Unplugged was the latest, which is the 17-hour fast, which, as the name would suggest, is kind of a minimum effective protocol that Dr. Frank Merritt, who's an emergency room physician who's board certified in internal medicine, came up with the protocol, and we wrote that together. So yeah, really, that's a heavy co-authoring phase right now. And then I also write for companies like Hana, which is a herbal or botanical supplement company, Momentous Protein, XPT, which is Laird Hamilton's company, doing some stuff with Conor McGregor's crew over in Ireland. And just really the blogging that's the day-to-day stuff, and then the books, which are a bit more long-term. So that was probably the longest, most rambly answer you've ever had, frankly.
That's awesome.
I'm English. That's what we do.
I actually just got the book, The Game Changer. I was at the Impact Summit here in Utah, and he was speaking, so I got that book. So that's great.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's one in the sales column, so thank you.
Yeah. There was a bunch in there, though. The Water 2.0 interests me. I love waterboard, or stand-up waterboard. So
yeah.
Talk to us about, there's so much technology. I've got my Fitbit. A friend of mine just got the new Apple Watch Generation 4, saying it's so awesome. He's going in the ocean with it. And how should we use that in a wise way and not use it? Because I'm sure there's ways that are great and ways that are maybe hindering our game and our fitness level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the thing with that is that it has to be a useful tool, but it cannot become a taskmaster that you just abdicate your decision making to. Because when it's spitting out algorithms like suggested programs for exercises and workouts and longer term programs, it's doing a line of best fit algorithm that some guys that work in a basement in Silicon Valley that have never exercised in their entire life are coming up with. And so it's the complete opposite of going to work with an experienced coach. But that said, it can provide some useful data points. You just need to, I guess, really look at what your goal is. So is your goal to run a 5K, or in some people's case, like a half marathon, a marathon? Is your goal to just be healthy enough to play with your kids or grandkids? Is your goal to do a Spartan race, or to be able to back squat 400 pounds? Or what is your goal? So really establish that, and then start to work backwards, as Fergus Connolly would say, and as we say in Game Changer in his new book, 59 Lessons. And from there, just figure out what information might be necessary and what numbers do you want to see move in order to get you to that goal. So again, if your goal is to run a 5K, and then maybe your second, third, fourth 5K, your goal is a time goal. Say, well, I want to run a 5K in 18 minutes or 24 minutes. Well, you're going to know that you're going to need to progress a little bit and get those times down progressively over time, slowly, in, say, the 10, 12 weeks leading up to your event. And so that's the simplest number that you could look at, is just time and maybe the amount of distance you're logging. And, that would be a useful number. What would not be useful is to take literally every metric that your Fitbit or the Apple Watch could spit out, and it just to confuse the heck out of you or stress you out, or you to try to make the numbers everything. And I think that, too, we see a lot of people running and they've got a device on the wrist, they've got headphones in here, they're looking at an app to look at their heart rate. And the problem with this is it's almost a process of disembodiment that is basically the exact opposite of Alex Honnold climbing El Cap in the movie Free Solo, where if he slips, he falls and he dies. Or Laird Hamilton surfing a 60-foot wave is not looking at his heart rate to see if he's in a certain zone, because, again, he will get thrown off and drowned. And so I think if we look, we don't need to be an extreme sports athlete to benefit from deep embodiment. And basically all that means is just being present and focused in the moment. And if you look at the work of someone like Stephen Kotler, who's an expert in flow states, and his book, The Rise of Superman, he kind of goes over the 7, 8, 9 triggers that you can use to manipulate yourself and get yourself into a flow state, which is really one of those where time disappears, you know, when you're functioning at your best physically and cognitively. And, you know, you go out and play tennis with your buddy and you think it's been half an hour, and 3 hours later you get home and your wife is like, wow, that took a while. And so really look into some of Stephen Kotler's flow state stuff. And one of these, you know, the prerequisites is absolute focus. And my contention is, and Brian McKenzie and Andy Galpin's too in our book Unplugged, that if you're looking down at that watch every 5 seconds, you are not paying attention to what's going on in your body. And that it really, you're denigrating that experience. And so it's not to say the technology is bad, but again, it should be a useful tool that you use to work backwards from your goals and actually look at numbers that are relevant to those goals, versus it being either another layer of technology addiction. I think Adam Alter in his book Irresistible says we look at or touch our cell phones every 6.5 minutes. That's a problem. And there's only one word for that, and that word is addiction. And so I think that, you know, we just need to use the technology wildly and wield it as tools, and we are in charge. The device is not your taskmaster. It is not your boss.
Yeah, I love that the book Unplugged. And let's talk about that a little bit, because I think right now, you know, with the holidays and, you know, everyone's setting goals, I think it's really good that you were saying start with the goal, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I got this Fitbit, or I got this thing, but they don't have any kind of plan. And they just are like, oh, I'm going to get so many steps a day. Well, what is that going to do for you? You know, what's your goal?
Mm-hmm.
So having that goal, but then the unplugged thing, you know, that right now is the time when most people are busiest. And a lot of our time is spent on screen time, or like you were saying, like being obsessed with all the data instead of actually being focused on what you're doing, like running or swimming or whatever you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, I mean, this is a time of year where there's some weird employment practices in America, not to bash America because I'm a dual citizen now, but, you know, when I was working for a company, we got Christmas Day off and we got New Year's Day off. Whereas all my family back home and, you know, friends in England and anyone I know anywhere else in Europe, you know, I have a friend Joe in Portugal, I've got friends all over the place, or even in the Commonwealth, you know, down in Australia and New Zealand. Like those countries shut down for 2 or 3 weeks at this time of year. Now, sure, there's the last minute Christmas shopping that we all do, but that said, it just a lot of companies talk culture to death, and they talk in quotes work-life balance to death, and yet their practice is a little more than modern day sweatshops. Like Dan Lyons, if you read his books Disrupted and then the new one Lab Rats, and I think Lab Rats, the subhead is like how Silicon Valley ruined work for the rest of us. It's just a chew people up and spit them out mentality. And this is the very time of year that we need to set some boundaries around our tech use, because we're so overwrought with these ridiculous labor practices that maybe give us 1 or 2 days off, and, you know, the corporate machine never seems to stop spinning. And so I think that if it would be nice if willpower was enough, but for a lot of us it isn't. And so using an app like Moment or Freedom or Rescue Time to, one, accurately gauge what your screen use is, because a recent study in the UK found that people chronically underestimate by up to 50% on average their tech use and their social media use. And so we're not good at gauging really accurately how long we spend on things. So you could use one of those apps to figure that out. And then from there, if you use the premium version, you know, it's maybe $10 a month, I think, for each of them, then it can set hard boundaries where, okay, you've been on Facebook for 30 minutes in a day, whatever, 10 minutes, whatever. It will literally cut you off if you wish it to. Or if you don't want something that's quite as drill sergeant, you know, so quite so Full Metal Jacket, then it will just pop up. You can set it where it will just pop up a reminder like, hey, whatever your name is, you know, you've reached your time limit for the day. So there are kind of degrees of which you can set it. But I think a lot of us need to be able to set better boundaries, not just in our personal relationships or that true work-life balance, but also with our devices. And so using something like Moment or Freedom or Rescue Time can really help provide that structure that often we say, oh yeah, I'm really going to cut back on that and spend more time with family and friends over the holidays. And then what happens? Everyone's at
Everyone's
dinner.
on their phone.
It's like the Will Ferrell device-free dinner videos that he did for Common Sense Media,
Yeah.
which
Those are funny.
even the kids laughed about it. Like, I miss Daddy, and he's right there. He's just messing with his phone.
Yeah.
You know, or my cohort Kenny Kane, who runs Oak Park, LA, which is a gym out in Santa Monica. He said that, you know, he was in line at the post office yesterday, and all 7 people were in front of him were not just on their phone, but on social media. So we've crammed visual stimulation, like a crack addicts, basically, into every little gap in our lives.
Yeah.
And I would argue, if you look at the work of someone like Joe Jacoby and his book about the slow movement, that really quality of life is about just chilling the heck out. So, I mean, I go lightning fast in my work because I'm on deadline, but I'm really trying to be better about creating a few more gaps in the day where I can walk 2 miles to the coffee shop, there and back, 2 miles each way. And that's my, in quotes, afternoon commute most of the time during the week. Well, that's an hour a day that some people might say, oh, well, you're losing an hour a day of productivity. We can't run our lives on a Henry Ford assembly line model. We're not robots. And so we need to stop living like robots. And to do that, sometimes we do need the help of putting some systems, some structure, some accountability in place.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, go ahead, Melanie.
Okay. I would say, talking about resetting, like, you know, resetting by getting off of social media for a while and off of electronics to see what your mind does. Then you've written that book, the 17-hour fast. So what does that do when you reset your body? Because I know a lot of us, especially with the holidays, you're eating things you don't normally eat and, you know, gunking up your system. So tell us a little bit about that book and the strategies behind that.
Yeah, and really that's designed where, so you eat a normal dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock, and then you just don't eat until lunchtime the next day. But beyond that, it's really a boundaries book. It is, as you said, a reset book. And so we encourage people to combine it with a tech fast and to spend more time with friends and family in the evening, and then in the morning to journal, or if you have a faith tradition, to pray or meditate or study your sacred text, to get out and take a walk, to be out in nature. And so really it's just an on-ramp, I guess you could say, for whole life change. And by resetting the place of food in your life, then maybe you can start to use that as a window into, what role does technology play in my life? How might that be harmful? Again, am I a workaholic? Like, me too, guilty, seriously. But, so this kind of thing. But the fast itself, if you fast for 17 hours, there are a number of health benefits here. And what we actually do is suggest that you reduce the portion size of that pre and post meal. So the lunch and dinner before and then the lunch and dinner afterwards, to about 50 to 75% of your normal portion size. And that you try to change the ratio, because a lot of us are just hooked on sugar, and particularly this time, and it's like, well, who doesn't love grandma's cookies? But maybe you shouldn't eat 48 of them, like 2 trays at one time. So it maybe change the ratio a little bit. So you're aiming towards like 40% fat, 40% protein, and only 20% carbs. And of those 20% carbs, we're looking more at oatmeal and at whole wheat toast, pasta, that kind of thing, that isn't just pure sugar, soda and candy and white bread and all of that kind of junk. So if somebody does fast, what we find, my mother-in-law's blood sugar was in the pre-diabetic, bordering on type 2 diabetic range for a really long time. And literally just by doing this fast for 6-7 weeks, she managed to get down, not just from knocking on the door of type 2 diabetes, back down through the whole pre-diabetic range and back fairly centrally into the, in quotes, normal blood sugar range.
Wow, that's great.
And it really starts to, there's a lot of crap out there, to be honest, about becoming like fat adapted and making it out that if you stop eating carbs, that your liver is somehow only going to be capable of producing ketones, which is actually nonsense. Like my co-author Frank Merritt is board certified in internal medicine, so I can tell you as a categoric fact that is absolute marketing BS, frankly. But really what happens is you can change the fuel blend that your liver and pancreas are kicking out, so it's a little bit less on the glucose side, and it's a little bit more on the ketone side. And we know that if you look at what happens on a cellular level, that sugar creates more excitability in the nervous system at the cellular level. And it's like those little ping-ponging around things you would see under a microscope in a lab, whereas ketones produce a kind of sense of calm and clarity, and it does not have that excitatory effect. So people have told us they've started to feel a little bit less, just permanently anxious and twitchy and stressed out. You're also, your body's going to do some stuff under the hood that you're not going to see, but it is going to benefit you. So autophagy, which is the clearing out of dead cell matter, and also the use of decaying cell matter to create new cells. It can actually start neurogenesis, which is the creation of new cells in the brain, which parentheses, so can dark chocolate. So eat more of it. It's awesome. Fish oil is another one, and so is exercise. So again, if you start stacking some of those things together and combining them, you can get some really good results. And then also we found that Frank says when someone is admitted to the ER, where he works in Panama City Beach in the trauma room, and they have a digestive complaint, if it's severe enough, they will write on the chart, nothing by mouth, NBM. And that means that patient is not to be given any food for 24 hours, because the guys that are board certified in internal medicine, the doctors know that if you just give the digestive system a little bit of a break, to your point, Melanie, that it sometimes does hit that reset button. And so literally just when do we give ourselves a break? Like if you look into the work of Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she has a wonderful podcast and also a blog as well. And she interviews Dr. Panda, who's one of the world's leading experts in time-restricted eating. And he says that, a lot of us are eating like 14, 16, or if we're workaholics like me, like 18 hours a day sometimes. And it's just putting our digestive system in this constant stress state. And that is not, we're starting to find out that that's all connected with the nervous system, with our emotional health, our immune health. And so really just giving it a break. And then outside of just doing this once a week, 17-hour fast, maybe just reducing the window which you eat in to 10, the minimum is like 12 hours. So, 12 hours of eating and 12 hours of not. And some people go further than that, to 10 hours or 8 hours, or there's even a popular diet where it's 4, which seems a little insane to me, but whatever. But even just reducing that from literally 14 hours to 12 hours in which you eat throughout the day, or 12 hours to 10 hours, can really start to provide some relief for your digestive system. And if you have IBS, if you've got chronic acid reflux, it's going to probably do some things that those over-the-counter or prescription meds are not.
So why does that go with, they say, you should eat like every 2 to 3 hours, like to keep your digestive system working and your metabolism working. So you're kind of saying opposite that we're really, by doing that, we're overstressing our digestive system by constantly making it work overtime throughout the day by giving it food every couple of hours.
Yeah, and again, I would defer to Dr. Frank on that, because as I said, he is board certified in internal medicine, and I would defer to someone like Dominic D'Agostino, like look up his interviews with Tim Ferriss, and then the related episodes for some of those other guests. Again, I would look at Dr. Sanchim Panda and his 2 episodes of Rhonda Patrick, where he really goes into the science of this, and he's on the cutting edge of all of this. And again, I'm just the messenger here. Like I've been blessed to have a real world apprenticeship with some of these experts over the years, and I just learned by osmosis. But I would refer people to the actual experts, like I mentioned, Dr. Panda, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Dom D'Agostino's work on ketosis, and really these are the guys and girls that are the world's leading experts on this. And a lot of what we're told about diet is complete hogwash. Like the phrase "breakfast is the most important meal of the day." Do you know where that comes from?
The cereal companies.
Yes. So 1918, a magazine funded and editor and publisher, John Harvey Kellogg himself of Kellogg's cereal fame, it was an article that he had assigned to one of his freelance writers. And, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And then post-cereal in the 40s and 50s really adopted that slogan. They paid physicians to appear in ads. Like Oh, here's Dr. Jones with his box of Kellogg's cornflakes. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, says Dr. Jones, a practicing physician in New York State. Oh, it's a doctor. We better believe him. It's crap. So for some people, eating breakfast may work. For me right now, I'm trying to kind of going through a process of muscle gain, of hypertrophy. So I am eating every 2 hours. I'm bunging in loads of protein. My eating window's really extended. But this is what John Berardi at Precision Nutrition calls kind of a level 3 eating scenario, where I have a certain weight goal I'm trying to get that's tied to performance. And to do so for 10 or 12 weeks, I'm just doing something that I would not normally do. And once it's over and I'm at that body weight and I can maintain it, I'm going to go back to, this probably 10 to 12 hour eating window where I'm intermittent fasting. Most days I'm doing the 17-hour fast once a week. But I think, a lot of people, Melanie, have been burned with being told you need to intermittent fast every day. That's intimidating, right? And it can give them a bad experience. Or it needs to be this training plan where you start with a 12-hour fast, then you go to 24, 36, 48, 72. And it's almost like you're in the weight room where you're just trying to put more and more pounds on your back, on the bar or whatever it is. It doesn't work like that. So really, Frank, the genesis of this 17-hour fast was his best friend was diagnosed with the most aggressive form of brain cancer. And the best case prognosis was 6 months to live. And that didn't sit too well with Frank. So he got together with other physicians, every kind of ologist you can think of at a hospital. And they started to come up with some protocols to keep their friend Jason alive. And one of these was this minimum effective dose fasting protocol. And Jason managed to live just over 7 years. Despite the ravages of chemo, him and his wife had 2 kids, their first and only children. And he practiced law right up until the end. And the cancer went into remission. And then eventually it came back even stronger and unfortunately took his life. But really, so this book isn't like most fasting books or diet books are trying to sell you a line of supplements. They're trying to sign you up for a monthly diet plan. We have no agenda. What we're doing is fulfilling a promise that Frank made to Jason, that what managed to keep him alive and give him vitality all that time to really outlive that prognosis was, partly due to this fasting. And so really, we just want it out there to the world. And, even if it isn't as extreme as this aggressive form of cancer, it can still start to move the needle. It can help you with your blood sugar issues. It can help with your digestive system issues. And it can really just give you a bit more vitality. And you don't have to do something every day. It's just once a week, purposefully don't eat for 17 hours and then stack that with some of these habits we've just mentioned. And it doesn't need to be this extreme thing. So yeah, I guess going back to what we talked about at the start, like one thing for the new year, if you want to get in shape, back in shape, better health, better wellness, better fitness, one thing you can do is this weekly 17-hour fast. And really our goal is be nice to sell some copies, but we just want to help people. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, tell us real quick the other 2 things. What are the other 2 things we can do for the new year?
Yeah, so I think the other one, just in working with Brian McKenzie and Andy Galpin on our book Unplugged, Brian and another coach called Rob Wilson have got this breathing methodology or set of protocols called Art of Breath, which is what you can find on Brian's website, powerspeedendurance.com. And then there's a tab that just says breath, and there's a bunch of free stuff you can do. So really, I would argue, we take as human beings between 16 and 22,000 breaths a day. And yet we're only aware of a single one if something falls apart. Like if you've ever had a panic attack and you're gasping for breath or feel like you can't breathe, or if you're out on a run and things going along pretty well, but then suddenly they're not, and your breath gets away from you and you kind of bonk and crash and that kind of thing. And so really, I think Brian's point is if you literally at night, if you just did 5 to 10 minutes of slow nasal breathing and you focused on the sensation of that, and then from there, during your day, any time that you were feeling stressed out, if you really paid attention, you would find that you were mouth breathing, that you're breathing rapidly. And when you take the nose and the diaphragm out of it, some things start to happen. And one of them is that you're either putting your body in a state of fight or flight, or you're keeping it there, which is why a lot of people find it so hard to relax. So literally 5 to 10 minutes of slow, calm nasal breathing at night, lying straight down on the couch or on your bed. And then during the day, if you feel yourself start to get stressed and everything is out of control, the one thing that is still in your control and it's always with you and you need no equipment to manipulate it is simply your breath. So just slow yourself down. And just take, even if it's 3 to 5 nasal breaths. You're stuck in traffic and someone's flipping you off, whatever it is, you're waiting in line, airport security, and you're worried you're going to miss your flight. You're late for your kids' practice or game. Just take it 2, 3, 5, 10 nasal breaths and see the change in your state. And really that to me is one of the biggest game changers going. And so, yeah, like I said, check out Brian's website for more on that, but that's as simple as it is. Just be more aware of your breath and when you're stressed out, and then again at night, just some calm nasal breaths, and it can literally change everything. We do some stuff with it's an organization called CAMO, which is works with veterans who have TBIs and PTSD. So it stands for like Challenge Aspen something else, I can't remember. But this lady Emily Hightower and her husband Brian, they really do amazing multimodality work, and a big part of this is breath work. And I'll send you the link to this to link out to it. But these tools are as applicable on the front lines, or guys and girls coming back from the front lines, as they are to you and I standing in the grocery line. Mm-hmm. Crap, I've got to get back for this meeting. I've got to meet my wife for a lunch date, whatever it is. Stressed out in the grocery line, the same techniques we're giving these guys that are either redeploying on the front lines or are coming back messed up are just the same. And really it all just starts with nasal breathing, and just being able to access your breath means that you can have control over your brain and your nervous system and can chill yourself the heck out.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
You've just been action-packed, jam-filled with useful, great stuff. I couldn't even write fast enough. So good thing, we're going to, we need to have this podcast transcribed too. So then we're going to actually go back and look at the notes and catch everything and see it all written down and all the links and the different authors. And it was, wow. It was a wow podcast today.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. What's the third one? Just tell us and I'll have to look at how to do it. Yeah,
I think really just Kelly Starrett's Mobility World System is just basically built around doing 10 minutes of soft tissue work a day, every day. And so a lot of people just know this as foam rolling, right? Yeah. And, they just foam roll their calves or their quads or the bits that are sore, but really just going head to toe is a simple way to do it, and only focusing on maybe 2 things or one thing. So maybe one day you do just smash your quads, but then another day, maybe we find a lot of people in the strength training world are so matted down in their abs that it's so gristly in there. And Kelly's contention is that while we don't have the studies yet to back this up, that a lot of sports hernias come from that just this massive amount of power is flowing from the hips to the shoulders and back again through the core. And then obviously people are doing more and more, in quotes, core workouts. Yeah. But when was the last time you actually rolled that out? So just getting a soft, squishy ball, lying face down on the yoga mat and just slowly moving that across those abs for 5 or 10 minutes. And now, check this out. This ties back into the breath. So the nasal breathing is one way to activate the vagus nerve, which really takes you from this fight or flight sympathetic state into a kind of rest and digest and chill the heck out, basically, state of parasympathetic recovery. Well, another way is what Kelly calls gut smashing, which again is just a fancy way of saying lie face down on a soft-ish ball and gently roll it across your abdomen. And if you do this at night and then you do your 5 to 10 minutes of nasal breathing on the couch, you will be mega relaxed because you've just given your vagus nerve 2 activation signals. And again, it sounds really maybe too much like common sense, but as the great sprint coach Charlie Francis said, the problem about common sense is it isn't that common, because we all know we should sleep 7 to 9 hours, and yet like 64% of Americans are sleep deprived. We all know we should eat well. Well, 66% of Americans are overweight or obese. And so just because you know something cognitively doesn't mean that you're doing it or you're practicing what you preach. So yeah, really, I mean, just to summarize, once a week, 17-hour fast, which again, you eat dinner the night before and you just don't eat again till lunch in its simplest form. Don't even need to buy the book to do that. 5 to 10 minutes of slow, controlled nasal breathing. Take the mouth out of the equation at night. And then when you're stressed out in the day, find your breath. It's there. Slow it down. Few calm nasal breaths. You'll chill out. And then finally, just 10 minutes of mobility work a day, including, particularly if you find it hard to relax in the evening, this gut smash with a kind of a low or medium firmness ball, just very gently, very, very slowly across the abdomen. Don't go up too high because you can actually bruise the diaphragm. But if you stick in that kind of low to middle end, it's gonna feel gross and gristly the first few times. But because of what it does, that relaxation response, you can get kind of hooked on it. So just combine those three things, and that's going to do you just as good as renewing your gym membership January 1st.
Awesome.
Love it. Well, tell us where we can find you and people can look up and get more information.
Oh, goodness, that's a loaded question. So my co-writer, Kenny Kane, and I did a 30-day tech fast, and now I'm doing a reverse tech fast where I'm back into the social media for 30 days, but I'm not sure if I'll stay on there and to what extent. But yeah, just philwhitebooks.com, because that's going to be active one way or another. So I don't update it very much, but if anyone wants more info on what they heard here today, just fill out a contact form, which will shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to get back to you quickly. And yeah, would love to have a conversation with anyone and everyone, really.
Yeah, and you will provide those other links too that you said, right, Jen?
Yeah. Yep, and we'll put the link up on the bottom, philwhitebooks.com. Awesome, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for letting me ramble in a kind of very espresso-fueled morning.
Well, I learned a bunch. I think all of us are inspired. I can't wait to try all of this stuff and have my kids and friends try some of this stuff. They're going to think I'm so smart, but I'm going to tell them it's because I listened to Phil White. That's why I'm so smart, taking his advice. So thanks again for stopping by. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, Elite Expert Insider. We'd love to hear your comments and please share it. And if you want to become an author, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com. And we'll see you next time. If you'd like to create the most powerful advertising tool for your business, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com, where we will help you create, publish, and make your book a #1 bestseller, and show you how to get new leads and more revenue for your business. If you'd like to check us out on our Facebook page, we have a free book for you as our gift. Just go and click Free Book. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment for our podcast. We would love to hear from you.